Alright folks, so in the first video it was an unboxing, and this is the first part of doing the installation of the MultiTool belt grinder. Step number one says to, well, disconnect the grinder from the power source. That's always important. From the right end, remove the wheel cover, wheel flanges, wheel guard, and then fit the slotted adapter. So first thing I'll do is take off that cover. I am going to try and get through this quickly. It'd be nice to have a real reflection of how much time it actually takes to make this happen. And I promise I have not done this before. This is a true-to-life depiction of how this happens. I have no idea how I'm going to hold that thing in place with 1 inch. 1 inch is a little loose, but we may have to deal with it. There we go. I think I planned that. Alright, looks like there's a set screw in there. I found a quick wrench to fit it. I'm kind of excited to get this belt grinder going. One of the nice things about doing fabrication or assembly is having a quick, good tool to do what you need. And it really speeds things up. So as I'm prepping different metals for welding, having a little bit more aggressive solution for prepping those ends, I think will play out really well. I have no idea what that is. It's not coming off. Like it may have buggered the threads. So, in the interest of expediency, I will use the wrong tool for the right job and see if we can get that to come out of there. That set screw ran into the threads and has misshapen things. Hopefully I'm not buggering up all Jesus with that. There we go. Alright, lock collar off. Good Lord, everything's going to fight me. Alright, let's see if we can make the same mistakes with this we did with the other one. Alright, inner, outer. And that set screw really boogered up that shaft. Moving just a little bit at a time. I don't want to have to get a puller out. Right. Next up is taking the outer shroud off. Any horizontal surface collects my tools, and I have no idea where they go. Cool. That gets us down to the part we have to start bolting on pieces of the the MultiTool. This piece right here is the basis of it. This mounts to the belt grinder, and everything else mounts to it. And I think all this is pre-assembled, but that's got to come out of there. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to read the directions, and then we'll come back together at it. All right, so I did a little bit of disassembly. Got the belt off of it, I pulled the shroud off. What I was trying to get at was that plate. They had it bolted in there. One of the things they talk about in the directions is to put the taper side the outer edge of the adapter plate is tapered. Face the smallest side away from the grinder motor as shown above. Alright, so when you're messing around with this thing, if you have that plate in the wrong way, it won't sit flush. If you flip it over, it sits down in there. And I think what they're doing is using that as kind of a wedge fit to make it fit. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's low on that side and high on that side. So this goes to the outside of the grinder. Sorry, that goes to the outside of the grinder, and this goes towards the grinder. So I'm gonna put it on that way. And they've got the plate pre-slotted for 3 holes versus 4. Well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna compare the bolts I pulled out of there to what they've provided in the kit by number. And they say plate A using bolt 3, 5, or 9. And those are differing lengths. So 3, 5, or 9. I'm not too certain about how that plays out. But what I'm going to do is take the old bolt that was in there and compare that to the ones that have been supplied in the kit. These are just a little bit longer. That plate's a little bit thicker. I've got 4 in a box. I'm going to pull 3 so I can use them. And they are a flange head screw, meaning they kind of have the washer built in. So I'm probably going to just take advantage of that. It doesn't say anything about using Loctite, so I'm just going to lightly assemble first. See what that starts to look like. And then we'll go from there. It's a pretty nicely machined plate. There's not a lot of slop in the screws. I want to run them down by hand. And all right, it looks like I get a little bit more disassembly to do. Maybe their first instructions should be something about blowing the whole thing apart before you even get started. And they don't have any torque settings. So if I remember right, on a 10mm bolt, at least that's what that looks like, you get 8 to 13 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and torque that puppy down. I'll be back with you in a second. All right, got the torque wrench out. We're going to throw 10 foot-pounds on these things just for the heck of it. And I decided I'm not going to blow away that bracket anymore. I'm just going to hold it up there and see if I can get it on. That's roughly centered. Getting the feeling that 10 may be a little much for these. I'm not comfortable driving that all the way in. 8 might be a better choice. So now, the bolts they have you put in this thing, they just kind of span the gap between the two pieces. So I'm going to set a bolt in the top here, just to kind of see what that looks like. And I think I'll just set that on there. Oh, I might even do that with 2 of them. Let's set the other one in there and see if we can make that come together. Not a whole lot of effort. Excellent. I'm going to let that hang there. Put this one last one in place. Put a washer on it. Put a nut on it. All right, check this out for a second. So the bolt that they would have you use is that one right there. But as you're looking at it, see how it's tilted? I'm not a big fan of that. But maybe that's by design. I don't know. I took just a regular bolt without the captured washer on it. Put that in there. It's a little bit better, but it doesn't have the same crush surface. So I don't know. I guess I'll put their called for hardware back in there. I don't want to be re-engineering things. I'm going to assume that they knew what they were doing, and not up to me to second guess them. Let me get this one out and we'll put the funky other one back in there. Maybe take a first shot at lining this thing up. The directions are written like the thing was already torn apart. So I had to do a lot of disassembly in the process. And it looks like most of the hardware is metric. I'll take a first shot at tightening this up. Get a 10mm Chinesium wrench made by Craftsman. Hold that in place. Kind of what I'm looking for is as this thing goes together, like what kind of challenges are there with alignment? I don't know. Just kind of making sure that's seated well. Would have been nice if they'd used some captured nuts in there or a threaded plate. So, because it looks like you're going to have to disassemble it to adjust the angle of the belt. Not a big fan of that, but hey, we're cutting corners and saving money, so let's see how that works out. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll read up on the next step. We'll go from there. All right, did a little reading up on the instructions. They say that when everything's tight here on these 3, that should be flush. That feels pretty flush to me. Then they say that you can fit the drive drum. They include a nylon bushing for smaller shafts, but since I bought the full horsepower, it fits right on there. So it says slide it over, use some spacers. If it's running into this kind of stuff, we're going to slip that on there. We'll see how things look. Ooh, that's pretty. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Let's see, drum is on. All right, use a 13 or 16 diameter washer under the shaft nut and tighten. So let us see. They include something in the kit for that. And it looks like on mine this is required to make sure that the threads are in there. Or I'm sorry, the threads are at the right depth. It doesn't even go on, so it's got to be this one. A little bit of slop in that, not completely delighted with that, but put a nut on it, see what happens. Now, while I was off camera, I took some sandpaper. Well, I guess I'll unplug this thing again. Ran it up to speed, cleaned up that shaft. Made sure that drum would fit on there nicely. Let's see. If the drum does not run true, use a rubber or leather hammer to tap on the inside edge of the rim where runout may occur. A poor quality nut may prevent the drum from running true. Is this the case? Replace the factory nut with a high quality alternative. All right, well, let's see what we got here. Actually, just enough room to get a wrench in there. I'll run it down and snug it. I'm just going to try to hold on to this thing. Man, I don't see any run out on that at all. If I were really interested in letting my nerd show, I'd break out the runout dial and see what that looks like. But I'm pretty happy with that. I'm also pretty happy with the grinder. I found a grinder on Craigslist. Got paid $100 for it. Came with a cheap ass stand, but hardly used at all. So excited to see how that turns out. All right, we got the nut on. Tensioner arm cam plate must now be set a 1/4 inch from the inside edge of the drive drum. I think it has to do with how far this mechanism is left and right compared to that. Well, all right, now I get it. Looking closer at the picture, from the inside of the drive drum to that spot right there is supposed to be a 1/4 inch. Let's break out the dial micrometer and see where we're at. Look at that, 0.246 inches from the factory. So that's good. And I stuck a wrench on the 2 bolts that are back here to make sure those are tight, and they were. All right, set the tracking lever. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let's tracking lever's here, and I think it just kind of tilts that whole assembly left and right. That's going to be for adjusting the tracking on the belt. We'll see what that looks like when we get the belt on it. I'll spin it by hand a little bit just to see where it's going. Let's see if I can adjust that. Fit the belt and release spring-loaded contact wheel by lifting the catch. Lord. Woo! All right, we'll take you guys off the tripod for a minute. Sorry about all the... So, the way this thing works is there's a big spring inside that cylinder, pushes this wheel out against the belt. Now, in order to get the belt, sorry, trying to adjust my shot here. In order to get that belt under tension, there's this catching mechanism here, and I bet, man, that's a little funky, because I lifted that catch and whoa, holy crap, that's crazy. I hope you guys saw that. So it's probably best to do that with 2 hands, and you saw earlier how I was putting it up against my body to push in on it and kind of work with that mechanism. That's a little sketchy there, but what would be nice if that was an oil clutch where it kind of you lift it up on the catch and that slowly moved out under pressure. Probably a better unit would have that available. Let's see if I can get you back on the tripod without destroying my crappy little web camera. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to shove this thing back in. Lock that catch. You certainly wouldn't want that thing to snap loose while you're got your fingers in there anywhere. Man, that's crazy. I am not a big fan of that. You know, I'm going to be throwing some WD-40 on that. Doing something. All right, so the belt's on. The catch is released. Let's see. Spin the belt over a few revolutions by hand. If the belt wanders towards the drive drum, loosen the top bolt and tap the top of the cam plate in a small amount towards the drum. So I'm going to run that by hand. Shit, that don't look too bad. I want to play with this lever here just a little bit. Kind of see where we're at in the adjustment. All right, with that all the way down, it kind of moves over on that part of the wheel. Get it all the way up. Yeah, it definitely comes all the way over. A little bit of slop in that thing, so. I'm interested to see where that settles in at. I'm assuming it's going to be different with every belt that you put on it. That is not the truest running belt I've ever seen. It'd probably be nice to bring that over a little bit, but I want to see what it runs like under power. I'm going to plug it in. We'll see how it runs. Well, that is not the highest quality belt. I could probably adjust that one main part. I tell you, man, that's a hell of a lot more aggressive than, well, here, the little 6x36 worn out Craftsman wood sander I've been using. So, let me fire this up and I'll bring you in close on it. That's a pretty cool setup. Gonna need to get some rubber feet to that thing to keep it from walking all over. It's a big pain in the ass before. I'm gonna put y'all back on the stand. thing to do, and the last thing in the box is the shroud that covers the back. I'm going to play it brave and not unplug it. Oh yeah, and we've got one more thing there on the end, is that there's a disc that goes on here that holds a sanding disc. So let's oh, son of a bitch. How the hell is that supposed to work? So I got to put this last plate on. Got their brand on it and everything. And these are just through holes. And those are through holes. So how am I supposed to get that on there when I can't get to the nuts on the back side? That kind of sucks. Alright, so here's what I had to do. I had to recollapse the finger catcher and lock it in, and then I had to pull the drum back off. It's a pretty good fit. I had to get the puller out to get the drum off. So although I'm not enamored with the installation instructions from MultiTool, if y'all are listening, the fit of this thing is pretty solid. So we'll stick this shroud on. Run some bolts down. Put them through from this side just because the don't have to screw around with that drum. Alright, we'll throw a 10 on there. This would be a good idea to throw some Loctite on some of this stuff. Alright, so now, put the drum back on. Put the washer back on. Millimeter. Belt back on, and then the last thing we'll have to do is the plate. I do not like that at all. MultiTool, if you're listening, I'd like to fix that a little bit before the next iteration. All right. So that's good, that's good. The last thing we got to put on is provide us with a plate that covers up the end of this. Some flathead screws that go on there. And then an adhesive sanding disc. I think I'm going to wait on that because I'd really like to see if I can get that a little bit tighter. But for now, things are looking pretty good. I'm pretty sure I'll use that. Oh, I bet y'all want to see it grind something, don't you? Let me get some safety goggles and a piece of steel off the rack. standing on the stand so it doesn't take off. All right, that's pretty aggressive. Hope y'all can see it or not, but that puts a nice edge on that. I'm reasonably happy with all that. So we will use that tool for a little while and see how it holds up. Thanks for watching.